Well, thanks to both of you for joining us to talk. I believe we're going to talk about ferries. And hoping you could bring people up to speed a little bit about what's going on here at Mackinac Island in relation to the ferry service from the mainland.
Well, really, it started back a little over a year ago when the current Hoffman family of businesses, or Hoffman Marine, purchased the second ferry company, which was then Starline, which then creating what we believe, I believe everybody believes, is a monopoly with no competition to ferry boats coming to the island.
So it's been a real challenge to understand what's going to happen in the future with the ferry boats. And so we've been working on the island to understand what pricing will look like and what that means for our customers, for the residents of the island, and how we have access to this island. Because unlike other places, you can only get to Mackinac Island via ferry. So it's a real difficult point for us to understand how we're going to maintain fair access for everyone to be able to access one of the larger parks in the state.
There's just in the news in the last few days there's been some legislation that is headed to the governor's desk. How would that legislation, I guess, impact the island and kind of the ability to regulate rates or have more of a say?
So the island charter dates back to 1899, and the government of Michigan put Mackinac Island, created Mackinac Island, and its charter. That charter gave us broad opportunities to restrict and regulate ferry boats. We are the only non-home rule city in the state of Michigan. Therefore, if we want to change our charter or update our charter from 1899, we need both houses of Michigan's House and Senate to vote by 2/3 to give us that ability. So Senate Bill 304 did that, expanded our ability that was already defined by their charter in 1899, just to expand it to modern day law. So we appreciate Speaker Hall, especially, but John DeMoose, who pushed it forward in the Senate, Parker Fairburn, who pushed it forward in the House, but the Speaker brought it home for us.
Okay. I assume you were both probably lobbying action on that topic, and if so, what was your case to legislators and why this should be done?
Well, in this case, we're a little bit different because we don't have home rule here on Mackinac Island. We have to go to the state, and we need the state's help on it. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is this is about a monopoly now versus, when there was fair competition, these things were already kind of self-regulating because that's why we have businesses and we have competition. But right now it's with one control. We saw actions that were taken unilaterally by both companies that were harming the residents, that were harming our customers. And so therefore we had to really define what that regulation looks like and acknowledge the fact that it's now one person making decisions for both companies. And that's creating a hardship and difficulties. And you think about the residents here, when those prices go up or they add in new fees for bringing your groceries over, for bringing in getting access to medical care. We can't do that on the island unless we leave the island. And they're starting to charge fees that are out of our control. And so we really want to make sure that that's regulated and understood. And we fully understand, like any business, prices do have to increase, right, as we deal with the economy. And but we need to make sure that it's fair for the folks that are coming over, that we're not just saying, hey, we have a monopoly, we have the control of it, so we're going to go charge them whatever it is that we want, that it makes sense that what they're charging them, and that we have some insight into see why those costs are increasing, what we're doing about it, and some decision making in it. And for those of us that are, a business owner, this is our investment in our livelihood. We're just a small family business trying to make it here. And if this is versus a very large company who could, cut off access for a year, and that would destroy my business. We'd be out of business, right? And so we want to make sure that we're protecting the business, we're protecting the residents, and we're protecting our customers that are coming over, and that we want to make sure that this is the crown jewel of Michigan, and people are still coming to the island, and understanding that this is a really important part of Michigan.
Have you seen, I'm curious about the bottom line for your operations. Have you been eating the cost of these extra ferry fees? Are you passing them on to customers? And if so, how is that impacting both your bottom lines, but also, I guess, number of visitors that are coming, things like that?
I would say that this year we haven't seen it yet. It's still early in the season, but last year we did see a decline in business on the island, middle of the season. Usually that's the peak for both of us and everybody else downtown. I own businesses, or our company owns businesses downtown. And so when the day traffic is impacted, those are the guys that are coming over from Mac City or St. Ignace, or even coming upstate for the day. When prices go up, gasoline, eggs, everything else, and you start adding fees onto the ferry, that just impacts the opportunity for them to come here and be on the island for the day.
Mark, I wanted to ask, has anything changed, I guess, with have you tried to talk to the Hoffman family about the ferry fees, and has there been any kind of change in tenor over time as this fight has become pretty public? There's lawsuits going on, there's legislation in Lansing. Maybe both of you could address that.
It's a little bit difficult to have direct conversations in that area from the business community with the Hoffmans, and then there is ongoing litigation between the city and the Hoffmans, so there are some rules that have to kind of be followed and processes in there. I think it's important to recognize that the Hoffmans have stepped up in a lot of different ways, and the CEOs of the different companies that are there have tried to help out a lot with the city in different areas where they can, so there has been some goodwill, but overall, it's been a real struggle, and there hasn't been a real understanding of what needs to happen in that communication process.
I might see that a little differently. So the local leaders of both the organizations, the two businesses that are owned by Hoffman Family Marine, are good in the city. However, we have an out-of-state owner who might not understand the rules that they signed on to when they signed on the franchise agreement, which clearly states if there is no competition, then the city can regulate rates, fees, etc. And that was in the contract that they signed when they bought it. And so they've disappeared, other than filing lawsuit after lawsuit. Us, we're a small community. You come up, you understand we have 500 year-round residents. We don't have a great tax base. We have a small budget that gets eaten up by legal fees. And so we have a large company who has deep pockets fighting a small city that has law on its side, but you still have to go through the court system and still have to spend dollars. And that impacts us not only through businesses, but also our local community.
Both of you mentioned the fees. Remind me, is it the ferry fees, or I think you both alluded to like extra fees that are being added on. Can you kind of talk about what those are and how they're having an impact?
So there are fees to come over on the boat, and I understand that, and Mark had mentioned it, that prices go up, fuel's going up, et cetera. So there's prices that are dictated or they present to the city. The problem with no competition is now there's not a third boat. There's not somebody else that in the free market can say, I'm going to undercut them. If they're going to raise their price $2 and charge $2 for a convenience fee, charge $50 to park, I'm going to charge less and I'm going to gain business. Well, there isn't another one. So that's where the non-competition, where in the charter and in the franchise fee says if there is no competition, the person to then regulate that would be the city. And so, fees associated with, we understand that they're going to go up, but all those added on fees are going to make an impact.
Are those fees that your businesses are directly facing as well, like parking? Trying to remember the other ones.
Sure, parking definitely affects us, and we have all of our employees that come to the island, and so parking for the summer, they have to pay for that parking, that piece of it. Those fees have increased. We have guest fees, and there were other new proposed fees, like possibly luggage fees that come across without a change in service, right? And so those are all new types of fees that could be out there that we want to make sure that there's a reasonable regulation on those.
Okay. What's next in this issue? I mean, if the law is signed, is that it? I mean, I know there's court cases going on, but what would that resolve it in your view, the legislation?
I don't know that it'll resolve it, and I don't know that we're going to be able to answer exactly what will resolve it, but we need to find good terms that provide consistent access so that folks can plan for not just this year, but in 3 years. This conference, for instance, I'm sure, David, doesn't just book this year. It takes more than a year to plan. And so we've got to know when that's going to be out there and be viable for us in the future. And we want to have a new contract that comes through that says, here's what it's going to look like for the next 20 years, and that it is fair, and that we have fair access for all of the folks who come to Mackinac.
Okay. What's your message, I guess, more broadly? Obviously, this is a very important issue on the island, but I'm curious your thoughts, just the importance of the island to Michigan generally, and kind of how this ferry fight could have an impact across the state?
So first, it's a state park. So we have one of our most treasured state parks was the nation's second national park. So it's a treasured park. So I've met people that said I came up as a middle school kid on a trip for a school trip, or I was a scout and I stayed in the barracks. And so they have history here. And so now that is impacting not only, I could say Mackinac Island and our businesses, but it's impacting everybody downstate. This is a jewel of Michigan, something that should be treasured by Michigan, something that everybody, and I think that the House showed in their votes that people all across the state, downstate, believe that this is an important topic that they, even though it doesn't necessarily might impact their district, but they voted in favor of it. So, because it's that important to the state.
Putting aside the ferry issue, how would you say business is generally for your operations in the island? And I'm curious if it's pretty good besides the ferry, or if there are like other pressures out there that you're dealing with.
There are a lot of pressures right now that are affecting tourism in Michigan. And this is definitely one aspect for this, but we worry about a lot of things, right? We worry about travel in general with the cost of gasoline right now. We believe that right now this year is looking very strong, so we're going to have a great year. And now that the weather is finally becoming summer up here, you guys got here just the right time, that it's going to be a really great summer. And people are coming. And I think that even with high gas prices, we realize that staying in Michigan, which is the best place to travel in, that Mackinac Island is a fantastic choice for visitors. It's a great place to do business and to have your business up. And we're really proud of all of the businesses on the island and what we've been accomplishing for Michigan. And I think it's going to be a good year.
And I'll add on to that, we have been lucky and blessed. Our Convention and Visitors Bureau has done a great job of marketing Mackinac Island. We just received USA Today's #1 summer destination 4 years in a row. So we are actually expanding through marketing efforts of people like in Arizona where it's super hot in the summer. So Coolcation is our little tagline. So if you're in Florida, Texas, Louisiana, Arizona, and you want to find someplace cool, you come up. Our business on the book seems pretty good. The unknown is the day traveler, the guy that's going to come up, the family that's going to come up for the day, that might be a couple hour drive, get here and spend the afternoon. Are they going to continue to come back? We can't judge that until the day of, unfortunately, but I think everybody still is committed to the island, and we are expanding our reach.
Yeah, I was curious, back to the impact of the ferry fees, and obviously you mentioned gas prices, which is, I assume, very important as somebody gauges whether to make the drive, particularly from downstate. Have you been able to gauge, or just somebody coming for vacation, how much the ferry fees have an impact? Or are they like, well, I'm here, I'm just going to fork over the extra money?
So I would say that it's, is it a huge impact? No. I mean, it's a $2 impact on the rate, $2 on a service fee, parking's gone up. But wherever you go to Disney, you're going to pay additional fees.